People of color have been actively excluded from our economy since the beginning. That's an intentional design. There's no way that we could have become the envy of the world in terms of our economy without the decimation and exploitation of indigenous people, without slavery, without Jim Crow. And there are a number of things that continuously perpetuate those historic inequities. We're going to become, in the US, majority people of color. And if we're not investing into people of color and communities of color, if we're not actually unlocking all the tremendous capacity and potential in those communities, then we're all going to lose out.
Racial equity has everything to do with economic recovery. The data is saying an inclusive economy will add more than $2.8 trillion to GDP.
This is Michael McAfee, the head of PolicyLink, an organization that collects research on economic inequities to empower policymakers, activists, and the public with data in ways they can actually use.
Our National Equity Atlas will give you a sense of how much a region, a city, a county, a state would benefit by closing gaps in racial disparities. We were invited to do a profile of Pittsburgh. We had a community launch to describe what the data was saying. And of course, the data was saying for people of color and poor people, it's awful. And after the meeting, community members came up and they were crying because they were like, this is the first time in a community context folks saw us. The data, it's a validator of their experience. Our data has been used to help President Biden's transition team think about racial equity. And we played a leadership role in helping to draft that racial equity executive order. That's the whole purpose of the data. Not to become intoxicated and paralyzed by it, but can it inspire us to act?
Building a truly inclusive economy requires a redesign at virtually every level. But one of the most effective ways to advance equity is through building and retaining wealth within communities that have historically been exploited and marginalized. Leaders like Rodney Foxworth at Common Future recognize that one of the surest pathways for this is through business ownership.
Entrepreneurship and business ownership is critically important to establishing an inclusive economy. In fact, by having increased economic interest and ownership in Black and brown communities, we actually can benefit all communities.
However, government programs aiming to support community businesses have a poor track record of inclusion. From the New Deal to COVID PPP loans, the populations most in need of support continue to be left out.
My grandfather, he was a veteran. When he came back to the US, he was denied the same rights and benefits that many of his white colleagues in the military were afforded. He didn't have the same opportunity to own a home. He didn't have the same opportunity to pursue higher education. That meant that when my grandfather passed away, we had his debts. All those things directly impact myself and my family. And that's just a generation or so ago.
Held back for generations by racialized policies, the average Black household now has just a fraction of the access to capital and wealth than a white household.
There are many, many examples of successful entrepreneurs in the Black community. That does not mean that the system is working. In fact, that points out the fact that the system is designed to make it difficult and nearly impossible for Black people as a whole to have a real stake in our economy.
In an effort to start changing this landscape, Common Future mobilizes funding for initiatives that support entrepreneurs.
There might be an opportunity for us to redefine what wealth looks like, what ownership looks like. Mortar is an example of an institution that's really been fundamental to leading a resurgence in Cincinnati for Black and brown entrepreneurs and small business owners.
About 10 years ago, Over the Rhine was dubbed the most dangerous neighborhood in America. Today, you'll find hours-long lunch lines for restaurants and pricey office spaces.
The neighborhood was originally about 90% Black. And now, when you fast forward to today, it's about 60% Black. The businesses that are opening don't reflect that culture. And so what we wanted to do is figure out how we could be intentional about carving out space for Black entrepreneurs who live, work, love the neighborhood through all of its challenges.
Alan set out to build Mortar, not just to encourage individual Black entrepreneurs to get in on the neighborhood's growth, but to transform the community as a whole.
Based on the barriers that we found for our entrepreneurs, we reverse engineered things to create solutions.
Good evening, Mortar family, and welcome to the official graduation, celebration, and pitch competition. Participants will have up to 3 minutes to pitch their business.
Mortar is a startup accelerator that educates aspiring entrepreneurs, helps provide shared storefronts, and runs its own fund for loans, grants, and equity investments.
To see this community that was once labeled as one of the most dangerous communities have this sort of revitalization without us being in the picture would be a travesty. You can see how collectively we are building something very special and something very lasting.
The winner this evening is Keelan Johnson.
In Cincinnati alone, we have had over 300 graduates in the last 7 years. And 71% of our graduates are still in business today. We have developed a system that works, and we are now in 6 additional cities outside of Cincinnati.
Mortar is just one example of what could happen if we systemically change the path for business ownership. Not just individual success, but a community transformation.
This is a very hopeful moment, even though it's challenging, because the beauty is the equity movement has matured. And all around the country, there are these pockets of brilliance where you see policy advances. Equity is the superior growth model for this nation. So it's time for us to have a wake-up call about what we're experiencing as a nation and what we can be.